So welcome if you're just joining us. We see that other people are waiting to get in, and we are going to give folks just a few more minutes before we start here, but we'll start at 10:05 exactly. So just another minute or two before we get underway. Nikki and Brittany, could you put into the chat the polls everywhere link, please? Great, thank you. So if you're joining us, as we take a minute, we'll wait, kind of give 2 more minutes for folks to finish logging in. But one of the features we're going to use today is something that enables flash polls. It's called Polls Everywhere. And if you look at the chat feature in the lower part of your screen, you can there's a link there that will open up a new browser window, and that will enable you to participate. There's also directions there for how you can text your responses in as well. If you want to get that set up, we'll start in just 2 more minutes. All right, it's 10:05. Welcome to everyone. We're so glad you're here today for the Normandie Beautiful Virtual Open House. I very much wish that we were back at the Betty Hill Center and meeting in person, and but this is what we have. And so, and we just recognize too that this has been really such a kind of stressful and distressing time. And so the fact that each of you have made time to be here today to continue this work of really creating a safer, healthier community means so much. I'm really grateful for your dedication and grateful for the work that we've done together and the work that's before us. So my name is Richard Parks. I am the president and founding president of Redeemer Community Partnership. Redeemer has worked in the neighborhood for about 30 years. Our mission is to build a healthy, safe, opportunity-rich community where children and their families can thrive. Today, we're excited to share the latest iteration of the Normandie Beautiful project, really based on the feedback that we received at our last community meeting on March 14th. So today, this is yet another opportunity to ask questions and to offer feedback on the project. Before we get started, I want to just go over a few technology tools that we're going to be using today to facilitate everyone's participation. So you will see that everybody is going to be muted throughout today's event, but using the chat feature on the bottom of your screen, you'll be able to type in your questions throughout the presentation. So please take advantage of that. The whole latter part of the of our time together this morning is dedicated to Q&A and just going through all those. So please use the chat feature I'm sorry, I said the chat feature, but please use the Q&A function on the lower part of your screen there. One of the tools we're going to be using today to share input with each other is called Polls Everywhere. And if you look at the chat box on the bottom, there are directions. There's a hyperlink that you can click on that will open a new browser window and it'll allow you to type in your responses for the polls. So let's just, and I should say too, that there is There's also an option there if you want to use your phone to text in responses. You can do that as well. And the cool thing about this little piece of a software is that it allows us all to participate and then to see each other's reactions immediately. So it'll form a word cloud on the screen. So let's just give that a quick try here. Go ahead and open the polling feature, and we're going to, in one word, just list out what is one of your favorite things about our community. Now you can enter up to 3 words, but each word is going to be shown individually. So in a word, what is one of your favorite things about our community? Let's just take a minute and we'll let those responses populate. Walkability. Okay, let's take another 10 seconds here if you're still working. Jacarandas, neighbors, diversity of our community, walkability. Awesome. Great. Yeah, I think there's just a sense of like there's just so many beautiful things about our community that make this such a wonderful place to live. And the Normandy Beautiful Project is really an effort to make our streets safer for walking and biking so we can really get out and actively enjoy our community together. Today, we are fortunate to have a really talented group of panelists here to both explain the project and then to answer your questions. So I'm going to invite each one of them to introduce themselves, beginning with Nikki Wong. Nikki?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nikki Wong. I'm a local resident. I live at 36 in Normandie, and I also serve as the Director of Policy and Organizing with Redeemer Community Partnership. Thanks for being here this morning.
Anna, would you introduce yourself, please?
Good morning. This is Anna Tabuena-Ruddy. I am a landscape architect in the Advanced Planning Division of Streets LA.
And Margot?
Good morning. I am Margot Ocañas, and I'm the director of a program called Safe Routes to School, which is housed in the Department of Transportation.
And Chris?
Hi, my name's Chris Ryder. I'm with the Los Angeles Department of Transportation. I currently work in our Vision Zero group, and previous to that, I worked in our Southern District office. I'm very familiar with this area from that time as well.
Great. And Nina? Nina, we'll come back to you in just a minute. Lamont?
Hey everyone, my name is Lamont Cobb. I'm a Planning and Economic Development Deputy on the Capital Projects team for Councilmember Marquise Harris-Dawson.
And Nina, I see that you're probably not able to speak just yet due to a technical thing, so we'll try and deal with that so that you can participate in the panel discussion later on. So thank you all for being here this morning. We're really so grateful for all the ways that you have worked with us throughout this project, and grateful that you're taking time today on a Saturday to be here to answer questions and help explain the project. So I want to give a quick overview of our project. It's pretty simple, or a quick overview of our time together this morning. So we are going to start with an overview of the project, and then literally after that, the rest of the time is devoted to Q&A. So in order to provide kind of an introduction to the project, we've created a short video, and I'll ask Nikki if you'll go ahead and get that started now. Thanks.
Every 2 years, Caltrans runs a competition to fund local active transportation projects that improve safety for people walking and biking. This year, $440 million is available. As you can imagine, the competition is fierce. To compete successfully, projects must increase walking and biking, create safe routes to schools and parks, provide matching funds, benefit a community disadvantaged by pollution and poverty, and engage community members in project development.
To get ready for the new competition, Redeemer Community Partnership began an outreach campaign last year to develop a shared vision that could become the basis of a highly competitive proposal. Our staff and resident volunteers knocked on doors, collected surveys, and engaged youth in a photo voice project. We also hosted walk and bike audits and community meetings and more. Many of you have participated and volunteered in these efforts. Today, we will present the latest iteration of the Normandie Beautiful proposal based on feedback we received at the March 14th community meeting. Before going into the details, I would like to introduce our councilman. We are so fortunate to have a council leader who actively champions the health and safety of our community. He has committed the city to investing $1 million in the Normandie Beautiful project. Many applications don't have matching funds, and this match will make our proposal even more competitive. So it is my pleasure to welcome Councilman Marquise Harris-Dawson.
Thank you, Nikki, and thanks to the Bureau of Street Services and the Department of Transportation. Most of all, thanks to you all, our community members, for taking the time to participate and engage around important changes for Normandie Avenue, especially in these so uncertain times. This project will build safer routes to schools and parks in our neighborhood, include new lighting, sidewalk, trees, and bicycle improvements. My office is working closely with Redeemer and Streets LA to ensure that we bring this important investment to our North area neighborhoods. Your input today ensures that the project is grounded in your experiences and in your needs.
Thank you, Councilman Harris-Dawson. Let's begin with an overview of the project. We are blessed to live in a beautiful and diverse community. We are also very fortunate to live close to many community resources. Parks, schools, shopping, museums, public transportation, and several affordable housing developments. However, it does not always feel safe to walk or bike. In fact, most major streets in our community, including Normandie, Western, Vermont, Adams, Jefferson, and King Boulevard, are on the city's high injury network, the 6% of streets that account for 70% of fatal crashes and serious injuries for pedestrians. To have a view into how difficult or dangerous active transportation can be, we asked our friend and neighbor Lisa Barlow to describe her experience navigating Normandie Avenue.
My 5-year-old started kindergarten. Her school is less than a mile away from our house, and the easiest thing for our family would be for me to just pick her up and bring her home every day. The first time I tried to do it, I got stuck and had to call my husband to come pick me up approximately 6 blocks away from our house. The next time, a Good Samaritan lifted most of my 600-pound wheelchair over a crack that I got stuck in. And I just wonder what it would be like for our community if Normandie was a boulevard that you could walk and enjoy as a pedestrian. I wonder how much more exercise our kids would get. I wonder how much more we would know our neighbors.
The Normandie Beautiful project has several important goals. First, to create safe routes to schools and parks for everyone walking, biking, rolling, and driving. Within a half-mile of the project area, this project will impact more than 6,900 students at 16 public schools with a special focus on Vermont Avenue Elementary School. This project will also create safe routes to 7 park facilities, including 6 parks and the Betty Hill Senior Center. Secondly, the project seeks to bring $20 million in infrastructure investment to our community. This includes repairing all sidewalks and curb ramps on Normandie Avenue and making them ADA compliant, planting trees, installing pedestrian lighting, adding bike lanes and bike routes to adjacent low-stress residential streets, and building traffic circles at key intersections and installing speed humps and more. The project is centered on Normandie Avenue from MLK Boulevard to the Santa Monica Freeway. Normandie Avenue serves as the project's backbone. Improvements will include repairing all the sidewalks, removing sidewalk obstructions like utility boxes, and adding accessible ramps. Every neighbor, whether walking or rolling in a wheelchair, will be able to safely navigate the sidewalks. Pedestrian lighting along Normandie Avenue between the Santa Monica Freeway and Exposition Boulevard will make walking safer after dark. Signalized pedestrian crosswalks will enhance safety for children, students, and other residents crossing Normandie Avenue. These are planned for 27th Street, where residents cross Normandie to go to and from Lauren Miller Park and Vermont Avenue Elementary School. Another is planned for West 35th Place, where students and their parents cross the street to go to and from STEM Prep Elementary School. Landscape center medians north of Jefferson Boulevard will help calm traffic and break up the wide expanse of asphalt with a natural element. Curb extensions will shorten the crossing distance for pedestrians at signalized intersections on Normandie, as well as some high-traffic residential intersections. Bicycle push buttons will be added so that people riding bikes can easily call the cross signal without dismounting and exiting the roadway. In the area around Vermont Elementary, several new signals will be added to increase pedestrian safety. Leading pedestrian signals give pedestrians a head start when entering the crosswalk. More pedestrian cross buttons will be installed, and speed feedback signs will encourage vehicles to slow down if they are exceeding the speed limit. Additional high visibility crosswalks and speed humps will be added throughout the project area to protect pedestrians and calm traffic. Initially, we had hoped to add bike lanes on Normandie Avenue. However, LA Department of Transportation could not do this with the off-peak parking that residents favored. So instead, the plan creates two adjacent low-stress bike routes on residential streets. One is on Budlong Avenue and the other is on Halldale Avenue and Denker Avenue. The Halldale segment between Jefferson and Adams Boulevard will provide bike lanes to Lauren Miller Park. The other segments on Denker and Budlong will be marked bike routes with sharrows and other safety enhancements such as speed humps. Traffic circles will be installed at highly trafficked residential intersections, for example, next to Lauren Miller Park. Traffic circles include a full four-way stop to calm traffic and keep people walking and biking safe. They also prevent drivers from doing donuts, those circular skid marks that sometimes result in crashes. Taken together, the city anticipates making a $20 million investment to our community to make our streets safer for people walking, biking, driving, and navigating in a wheelchair.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. Well, I've seen some questions coming in, so in just a minute, we're going to call up our panel to begin to respond to those. But first, let's just take a 1-minute poll. Based on what you've seen so far, in one word, what is one thing you like about the updated project? Go ahead and use that Polls Everywhere feature, and you can click on the chat link there if you haven't opened it yet. It'll take just a minute to let everyone get responses in. All right, I'm seeing sidewalk repairs, traffic, the crossings, safety. Excellent. Okay, we're going to close this in about 5 seconds. Okay, thank you, everyone. It's really great to see those responses. Now we're going to clear that poll and do a second question here. Is there anything that you'd like to see added or changed to the project based on the presentation so far? Go ahead and use Polls Everywhere again to put in your response. Again, one word works best, but if you have something like that needs 2 words, like bike lanes, you can just delete the space and that will keep the idea together. So go ahead and respond. If there's anything additional that you'd like to see added or changed to the project. Wider sidewalks. Bike lanes on Normandie, yes. speed humps. Okay, good. Let's take another 5 seconds if you've got you're about ready to hit send on your response. Okay, thank you. That is so helpful. And speed bumps, speed humps, very very prominent there in that cloud. So that has been a long desire in the neighborhood to have more of those. I'm glad the project adds some of those, but maybe we'll have an opportunity to talk about if there are other places where we'd like to see those added. Okay, and so with that, I'd like to begin our Q&A section. Again, Nikki is gonna read out questions to our panelists. She'll direct your questions to the appropriate panelist to respond. And with that, let's get started, Nikki.
Thanks. And I also just wanted to highlight to folks, it seems like the Q&A function might be a little difficult to use. So if you have a question, feel free to just type it into the chat and the panelists will receive the question. So the first question that we had sent in was, if this proposal wins the funding, do we know when construction could begin? So I'll direct that to Anna.
Hi, so construction at the earliest could begin summer of 2025, with design starting in summer of 2024.
Great. Let's see, we have another question. Will the residential bike lanes connect? So I think that's referring to the map where for the low stress network, share rows and yeah, the ones on this side. So I don't know if that might be Chris or Anna might answer that one.
Yeah, Anna, do you know about connectivity of those low stress lanes?
Yeah, so right now the low stress bike friendly streets are connecting to MLK on the south, and on the north it's connecting to, I believe it's Adams, and on Budlong it's connecting to the street past the freeway, because there's an existing network there. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Okay, great, thanks. Let's see, there's a couple more follow-up questions to the funding timeline. There's a question about how long would construction take to complete, and why does it take so much time?
Construction would take, am I on mute? Okay, construction would begin in summer of 2025 and would take anywhere from 2 years to 3 years. It just takes long because we coordinate with each block, and then we move forward with, you know, blocking parking, temporary parking, and creating the improvements. So that just takes time because of the close coordination that we do with the community as we move along each block of the street.
Great. Yeah, I'd also add this particular funding stream through the state. Just takes a while for approvals and for the funding to get to the city. So that's part of why it's just on a longer timeline as well, because it is such a large pot and it's coming from the state.
And there's also environmental clearances that we need to clear, yeah, as part of that. Yeah. So that's what takes long.
Great. Let's see. So another question about the bike share rows. Why bike share rows on Budlong instead of bike lanes on Halldale? Let me see. Let me see if that question was. let's see, why bike share rows on Budlong instead of a bike lane like Halldale? I see. So maybe the question is why, because Halldale's getting lanes with a buffer, why can't that be added to Budlong similarly? Maybe, I guess Anna or Chris, I don't know if it's a space issue or a design
Yes,
decision.
it's a space restriction. So we have to allow for parking, and then from that, then the travel lanes. And so there's not enough space. And Halldale, there's an extra wide roadway there. I can't remember the width. Nina, if you remember, it's just extra wide over there. So we actually have room to put a lane.
Great, thanks. We have another question. Will streetlights be part of the project?
Yes, we're looking into putting pedestrian streetlights along Normandie.
Great. Let's see. Will there still be opportunity to add additional speed bumps and traffic circles on surrounding streets?
We could look into that if there's any report from the community that collisions are happening or speeding is happening along a street. We can take a look at those locations. And just to follow up with the Halldale and Budlong, Budlong is 40 feet wide and Halldale is 60 feet wide. So that's a big difference in the width of the roadway there.
Makes sense.
And Nikki, if I could just add, for the
Yes.
person who asked the question about the roundabout, if there's a particular location that you have in mind, if you could just put that into the chat for us, that would be helpful.
Great. All right, our next question is, can you add another pedestrian crossing for Normandie between the 10 and Adams? All of the crossings are planned for south of Adams, but not north of Adams. So I think they might be referring to those, the Hawk, the flashing beacon crossing. Would that be, is that a possibility, or is there, yeah, maybe Anna?
Can you repeat that question? I'm looking for it on the chat.
Yeah. Is it possible for another pedestrian crossing to be added on Normandie between the 10 and Adams? Because all of the crossings right now, I think they're referring to the Hawk flashing symbols, sorry, the Hawk flashing lights. Crosswalks are all planned for south of Adams, but there aren't any north of Adams.
I think we'll defer to DOT on that one.
I mean, it's definitely an option. I don't know whether it fits in the funding that Streets LA has been looking at for this, but it looks like there are 3 potential blocks there that could work. It's something we could always look at adding to the scope of this project.
I can also add from the Safe Routes to School perspective that our focus was the school zone for Vermont Avenue Elementary School. And we worked with the school community to identify those routes that were most heavily used by families and students. And so that somewhat informed, as we are part of this larger picture, that we were highly sensitive to those major crossings, particularly at Adams, and on Adams, and so that there was a real reason for doing the curb extensions and the Hawk there, because that was heavily used. So that may explain sort of the density of where they currently are, but to Chris's point, there may be value in exploring those areas north of Normandie.
Thank you. And with that, Margot, I have another Safe Routes to School maybe related question. Someone asked that the presentation sounds like its anchor and focus school is Vermont Elementary. There's definitely a focus on Vermont Elementary. Is there any way that Manual Arts High School could be included as another school to focus on? Because there's a number of high school students that walk alone or bike alone to and from school. And the project area does kind of start, getting into that area, but not quite. So I'll start with that.
Sure, and just to be clear, the manual arts is not within the scope of the map that I'm looking at now. Is that correct?
It's not. Yeah, it's just south of King, and the project area is only from 10 to King. So,
well, this may be an indirect answer, and I'm happy to circle back. But just as a point of reference, Vermont Elementary was initially the focus. The program Safe Routes to School has used a very data-driven prioritization methodology to focus on schools with highest need in the city. And some of the indicators that we use to determine of the 835 LAUSD schools that are in the city, we look at the density of crashes within a quarter mile of a school. And we also look at the density of students that actually live within a quarter mile. And Vermont's school zone was such that it had a high propensity of people within a quarter mile. So our goal would be to try and make it safe and comfortable so they would consider walking. And that's also coupled with a high propensity of crashes. So that really informed our directing our attentions to that school. That's not to say that there aren't other opportunities to look at manual arts. Our challenge sometimes with high schools, ironically, is that their attendance boundary is so much wider that we have a limited scope of children that are in close distance. But again, happy to, I think in coordinating with the district engineer, there have been some issues that have been raised there. So happy to circle back on it. Not sure it would fall within the scope of this particular application.
Great, thank you. Let's see, our next question. How wide are the sidewalks on Normandie now? And is there opportunity in the project to make them wider? Since, yeah, all of the sidewalk is proposed to be redone. Yeah, go ahead, Anna.
Right now, the sidewalks are narrow on Normandie. There is a chance for them to be widened only if the community is open to removing parking lanes. And so if that's something that's the community needs to let us know, and that's something we can look at. But we realize also that parking is a premium in this neighborhood. And so that's something that we considered.
Great, thanks. Another question asks, is there something that can be done to prevent donuts and speeding at the intersection of Normandie and Jefferson? I do know at that intersection, there is a proposal to add curb extensions. It looks like there might be a landscape median just to the north. I wonder if maybe Vision Zero staff might have thoughts about how some of those design elements might help prevent speeding and potential donutting, or if you had any additional thoughts to what can reduce that kind of behavior.
Yeah, and this whole area, donuts are definitely an issue. When it comes to an intersection like Normandy and Jefferson, it's hard to prevent them entirely because we don't have any treatments that can be applied like down the center of either street, as both are in full use, Jefferson and Normandy. I believe there may be a future project coming to Jefferson. I'm not sure if it's coming out to this part that may make this street tighter. In addition to this, the curb extensions will definitely remove some of the space that they have that's as wide open to do the donuts there. But beyond that, it's a little difficult at a major intersection to prevent them entirely, especially at night when the street gets taken over. It's a little bit more feasible on smaller streets. We're experimenting down at Western and I believe it's 87th with creating a soft median down the center of the roadway, but that's an unsignalized intersection where we were able to prohibit the through traffic on that minor street.
Great, thanks. Let's see. I think as a follow-up to the question on additional speed humps, there was a recommendation on 29th Street between Vermont and Budlong. Okay, so yeah, we'll make note of that. Let me see, 29th between Budlong. I see, so between Budlong and Vermont on 29th. Okay. Let's see, there was a question for, does this project add to or intersect with the 2035 mobility plan? If street infrastructure like protected bike lanes and dedicated bus lanes makes sense when connected to a network that runs through the city, how can we achieve the 2035 plan when addressing tiny sections at a time if they stand alone? Let's see.
Where is that question?
I might be able to just provide a bit of background.
Sure, Margo.
That from the Safe Routes to School perspective, we actually, our starting point when we look at locations for proposing improvements is we actually lay across our map the neighborhood enhanced network. So that is in fact the bike friendly streets that are a part of the larger mobility plan 2035. And look at those dotted lines of the neighborhood enhanced network that are in close proximity to the school and target our improvements there. So both for bicycle and pedestrians. So as you'll see, although I'm scanning your plan and toggling between that and my more specific Safe Routes to School plan, we have some elements including raised crosswalks and signals and additional crossings that we have laid on the neighborhood enhanced network. But we are, as we've discussed earlier, we do have to balance the street width in determining how comprehensive we can be in the actual bike facilities.
Great, thank you. I don't know, were there any other staff that wanted to comment on that, on the 2035 mobility plan?
Hi, this is Nina with Streets LA. Sorry, I was having technical issues earlier. In developing a lot of our proposals for the bike lanes, we're also, like Marco was referring to, looking at baseline, the proposed bicycle enhanced network, the pedestrian enhanced network, and the neighborhood enhanced network, in developing our routes. And so I hope that speaks to the question as well. Let us know if there's any other clarifying follow-up.
Okay, great, thanks. Let's see, I think we have another question about how will the low stress residential bike lanes on Halldale and Denker and Budlong and Catalina connect to the east-west gaps on Expo and Jefferson?
Let me just clarify what they mean by gaps along Expo and Jefferson, because on Exposition, there's a class 2 bike lane there, and on Jefferson, there's a future ATP project that's in construction, I believe, right now.
Yeah, so I think that's the answer. Yeah, there's an existing bike lane on Exposition, and there's another bike lane
ATP
coming.
project.
Right, yeah, that will be, construction will begin next spring on Jefferson. Great. Let's see. Let's see, there's a question. I just wanted to acknowledge a couple of questions that have been asked that I think are outside the scope of this project, but there's been a question about removing liquor licenses from stores that attract homelessness, or homeless population rather. There's been a question about fireworks, question about installing cameras to photograph cars that are doing donuts. I think those are all, definitely important aspects and challenging aspects that contribute to what makes walking and biking, potentially unsafe for folks in the neighborhood. But, we can bring those items up and we're well aware of them. But it's not really, it won't be part of the scope of this particular project, which is really focused on infrastructure improvements that can help pedestrians and cyclists be more visible and slow cars down. So, but I just want to acknowledge, I see your questions. And yeah, that'll be my answer for those.
I just would add,
yes.
even though it may not be relevant, if it's helpful, that again, with Safe Routes to School, when we visit with the school communities, we involve, people, from multiple agencies. And one of the resources that we have found very helpful, because when we visit with a school community about safety, personal safety issues, and sort of unwanted activities also are raised. And in the past couple of years, Mike Fear's office at the city attorney has really empowered the neighborhood prosecutors who are embedded with the local police divisions, have really become more receptive to be able to respond to that. So again, I'm not sure who has branched out to who within the community, but sometimes they can be a useful resource.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I just remembered Lamont Cobb with CD8 is on the line too. So I don't know if Lamont, you wanted to comment on any of those questions.
Sure. Thanks, Nikki. Some of those issues, particularly around the liquor licenses, are kind of nuisance issues. So if you all do have particular stores where you see those issues, definitely reach out to our office. And you can talk to myself, you can talk to Albie, and we can also correspond with our senior lead officer from LAPD, particularly about some of those issues. As far as the cameras, that would also have to be a conversation with LAPD on how their current camera policy. Right now, our office is not necessarily pursuing cameras on this site. And we're kind of, we're trying to balance that issue across our district and thinking about issues around surveillance. But if that is something you all would like us to explore, we can try to talk with them about that to see if cameras are an effective tool against the donuts and the kind of things you'll see in intersections at times.
Great, thanks, Lamont. Awesome. Let's see, another item came in. Not so much a question, maybe just a comment that there's support for widening the sidewalks and adding protected bike lanes while giving up parking. And this person made a good point. If we invest in true bikeability, parking won't be as important. It's going to mean a leap, but like to hear the leaders in transportation make this case. I don't know if any of the maybe city staff have any reflections on that, how to have true bikeability and needing to make that leap in order to prioritize people walking and biking over cars and parking.
I think we just take the cue from the community. If a majority of the community is okay losing parking, we can definitely take out parking.
Great, thanks. All right. Let me see if there are any other remaining questions we haven't gotten to. All right. I see this one question that's come in. There are some residential intersections that are still two-way stops that can cause crashes. Yes, that is true. Did you consider making all of these into four-way stops? And if not, is there a reason to leave two-way stops in those areas?
Could you repeat the question, Nikki?
Yes, there are some residential intersections that are two-way stops that can cause crashes. I know of some of them are, along Halldale and Brighton. I know that area has a few of those. Was there any consideration to make them into four-way stops? And if not, what's the reason to leave them as two-way stops?
So in general conversion of two-way stops to four-way stops, we usually handle that through the district office. It's not something we would usually put into an application package like this, because once it's in an application like this, it can't be done until this entire package gets put into place, while through our district office, those two-way to four-way conversions can be done fairly quickly once they're justified through a process called warranting. So I would say if you either call 311 or email our LADOT Southern District office, and you can find that on the website, ladot.lacity.org. Let them know which intersections you're concerned about and you would like to be a four-way stop, and they can do a study, and our standards are a lot more lenient than they've been in the past for that conversion. So a lot of them would likely be approved in that scope. I think it just wouldn't be appropriate for the scope of this project, again, because of the longer timeline for this construction.
Okay, great. There was another comment that acknowledged, yeah, that there are issues with those intersections that are just two-way stops, especially one on 29th between Vermont and Western. There was another comment too, recommending speed humps and traffic circles on 23rd, 24th, and 25th between Adams and Western. And then a couple of questions regarding parking on Normandie. One person asked, how do we voice our support for removing parking on Normandie? And there were some follow-up questions too. What do you foresee as the effect of taking out parking in the neighborhood? Are there examples of how taking the parking out has changed the availability of parking and encourage people to take public transit? So I think voicing support for removing parking, part of that has been through this outreach process that we've been doing for this project. And yeah, from our experience, so in addition to this community meeting space and the other meeting spaces that we've hosted in the past 6 months, our staff have also gone door to door and spoken to a lot of neighbors who live right on Normandie to assess what are the parking needs. And I'll just share from my experience of speaking to neighbors and knocking on over 100 doors. It's kind of split down the middle. Some people really need it, some people really don't. But not also say, I think there can be more opportunity for conversation because needs might change over time. I don't know if any city staff have any comments about any examples that you've seen in your work of how removing parking has changed availability of parking, and has that encouraged folks to make a transition to public transit or active transportation options?
We've definitely proposed projects where we've taken out parking, but they're usually in commercial corridors where there's already parking provided behind the commercial businesses. So they have parking lots behind them. And so losing street parking wasn't such a big deal. In this case, one of the options that we did look at at the beginning of this project was to study what would it be like to lose parking. And we did a whole section study of that. And we also put kind of the pros and cons of that with people impacting parking in the adjacent residential neighborhoods if they can't find parking along Normandie. So those are the things that we presented, and then we left it up to Redeemer to just let us know, hey, which way did you guys want to go? And so we ended up with what we have right now.
Great, thanks. Let's see, another question, could it be possible to have a bike lane on just one side of Normandie, leaving the other side for parking?
I think that was also one of the studies that we provided at the beginning. And I think one of the pros and cons for that as well was that people on that side where you take out the parking might complain, and then it will also impact the other side of the street or adjacent neighborhoods. Trying to see if I can pull up.
While you're looking at that, there was a question about getting the DOT contact information for a four-way stop. And I think we're going to get that information and share it into the chat if it's not already there. Great, let me see. Yeah, these are really great questions, everyone. Thank you so much for asking them and thinking of them. And yeah, very well thought out, critical questions. Let's see. I don't see any other new questions. Okay, I think that might be it for where we're at with questions. If any more come up as we, oh, there's one more. Brittany, do you mind you can just unmute yourself and tell me which one it is.
Hi everyone. There was a comment about changing city infrastructure in a more piecemeal way. If people could get around via bike, there might be less parking. I don't know if anyone wanted to speak to that.
So as we have mentioned before, we really take the cue from the community. And I think, as Nikki had mentioned, it was a 50-50 split maybe, or I'm not sure how far and wide the survey went regarding parking loss.
Yeah, and I think part of the comment is also, you know, this project proposal is just a segment from the 10 to King, but yeah, why isn't it maybe more a longer stretch? I guess part of that is, you know, how much is needed for just this stretch, because there's been a historical lack of investment in this area. There's just so much that's not there. So it's just going to cost quite a bit to just put in almost like, you know, basically like the baseline of safety measures, curb extensions, better crosswalks, lighting, trees, sidewalks that are fixed, things like that. So I think we have a really unique opportunity with the active transportation project to get a very large pot of funds to address a lot of these issues at the same time for this stretch. And although it's not very, maybe it doesn't seem like it's long, but it actually has a lot of connectivity opportunity with the bike lane that exists on Expo and the Metro line, the bike lanes coming in on Jefferson, and there's a couple other projects that are going on in the area east on the King Boulevard, and I think some on the other side as well. So, so yeah. So there's opportunity for connectivity in this project as well. Great. Let's see. Oh, and there's one more comment I'll just add. Somebody shared it will be positive, a pro for having bike lanes on Normandie is that there's very few north-south bike lanes in our city, but there's a lot of places to go east and west. It's more challenging to find a north-south route by bike. Great. Okay, well, thank you so much. I think with that, I'll go ahead and transition us forward. If more questions or comments come in, you're very welcome to continue adding them to the Q&A function or even the chat function. Maybe we'll even, yeah, we're gonna do a couple more polls and wrap up. And then we're gonna post all of these questions and the answers in a document form and put it online for folks. And we'll share out the link and this PDF and the video to everyone who's participated this morning too. All right.
Okay. Well, many thanks to all of our participants for your great questions this morning. Many thanks to our panelists for taking time to be with us and for your responses. We really appreciate that. And again, as Nikki mentioned, there's still an opportunity to ask questions and give input. This is going to be this presentation will be up online for the next few days, and there'll be an opportunity to comment there as well. And let's just close it out maybe with one final question. We'll do a flash poll here. Which of the proposed improvements is your highest priority? And remember, if there's something that is 2 words, like bike lanes, go ahead and delete the space between bike lanes so it'll show up as one item. But let's just take a few seconds here and gather input from everyone. Which of the proposed improvements is your highest priority? Okay. Some walkability, crosswalks, sidewalks, crossings. A lot of us really like that 27th Street rendering. Crosswalks. Go ahead and take another 5 seconds here to input your responses. Okay, great. This is really such good input, and I really appreciate some of the focus on crosswalks here and some of the earlier questions that came up as well. So we'll continue to look at that as we develop the project. It's really good input. All right, well, just to close things out here, wanted to give you a sense of what the next steps are. We are going to be, first, just a reminder, I guess, that if you go to our website, redeemercp.org/Normandy comments, there will be an opportunity to give input until midnight on Monday night. That's Monday, June 15th. So just encourage you to, if there's more you have to say or ask, please get your comments in there. And then in terms of next steps, we are going to be working feverishly in the coming weeks to incorporate your feedback and to finalize this proposal. We plan to have the proposal basically completely finished by July 15th. Caltrans will begin to review it in the fall, in September, and then we hope to hear the results back of the competition like early to mid 2021 next year. So again, there's so much going on right now, and I just so appreciate each one of you taking time today to be part of this discussion, to ask great questions, to give input. This is really so helpful as we think about how do we work together to make our community a safer, healthier, more beautiful place to live and to enjoy together. So we will, of course, keep you posted on progress and, of course, ultimately the final outcome as well. But again, everyone, thank you so much and really hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care.
Thank you.